Okay, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Salatu wassalam ala Sayyidil Anbiya'i wal Mursaleen. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima tu'allimuna wa zidna bi fadlika ilman wa ta'liman innaka ala kulli shay'in qadir. So what did we say about hunting last week? What was the relationship between hunting and going to the bathroom? The whole discussion about difficulty in the Sharia. Umum al-balwa. What does that mean, Maryam? Maryam, are you able to speak? Or is it the wrong time? I don't know, but you're in Germany, right? I don't know what time it is in Germany right now. It's 5 a.m. Okay. So what was the issue about umum al-balwa? Hunting. So the default structure, right, is that you have to eat halal food. And in order to halal meat, you have to slaughter it in a particular way. The default structure is if you have najasa on you, you have to wash it off with water. So now we're looking at the Sharia changing. So when does the Sharia change? Does it change for life and death reasons?
Yes.
Yes. An example of that in food, it would be what? When is it
Eating,
Go ahead.
eating pork, for example, or there's nothing else
Right.
available
So
to you.
so it becomes obligatory actually, right? To survive, it becomes obligatory. Okay. So we say there's two principles then. The haram becomes halal under duress, like you would die otherwise, you would go insane otherwise, you'd lose all your property otherwise, you would leave your religion, you would not know your lineage, you could be sexually abused if that was the case. So now if that's the scenario, the haram becomes halal. Okay? So what about, does the Sharia change for anything else? Anything other than life or death situations?
Yes, Sheikh, for hardships that are experienced by many people.
Right? Good. So what about one-off scenarios?
No.
No. So what about a one-off darura, one-off duress, one-off life or death situation? Would the Sharia change for you? Someone's got a gun to your head as a one-off. Can you, for example, could you verbally leave Islam with a gun to your head?
Yes.
You could, right? Even if it's a one-off. So with duress, we don't need it. It doesn't have to be widespread. It doesn't have to be recurrent. It doesn't have to be normal. It's just, this applies to me randomly, okay? But when you're talking about difficulty, which is less than duress, right? Mashaqqa or haja, right? Then, or we call it umum al-balwa, it has to be aam, غير nadir. It has to be something that's widespread. It applies to me, it applies to you. So where's the analogy between cleaning yourself with toilet paper and shooting an arrow at a deer? How is it the same? How is it the same thing happening?
Sheikh, it's difficult to expect people to slaughter deer, for example.
Why
So
not?
that it has, sorry?
Why is it difficult to slaughter a deer?
Because they run away usually. They're not a domesticated
Okay.
animal.
So which don't eat deer then, right? Would you die if you didn't eat deer?
But that's not the point. A lot of people may depend on that for
Right.
their day-to-day life.
So it's a mashaqqa, it's not a darura, and it
Right.
applies to me, applies to you. You're hunting rabbits, I'm hunting deer, he's hunting elk, they're hunting ducks, whatever it is. We all need to do these things, and so there has to be a bend in the rule, right? Okay. And just like with eating pork, can you eat a whole pig if you're starving? No, you just eat the minimum you need. Similarly, الضرورات تقدر بقدرها. When the difficulty is there or the duress is there, we limit it to its actual problem. So here you met a deer that was lying down on the floor. And the deer said, please slaughter me. I won't move. And you said, really? And he said, yes. Miracle happened, right? Or you shot it in the leg and it couldn't move anymore. You got it in a particular place in the leg, it can't move. It's not dead. And it will die maybe in like 6 hours. So now you have control of the deer. It's not moving its head. It's not dangerous. You get out your knife and slaughter it. Okay? So it has to be a widespread normal situation, and it's going to be limited to the need, right? Limited to the need. Same thing, we go to the bathroom. We're going to say, where is the actual need? On your private parts, in the normal place where the filth goes, this kind of filth, not another kind of filth, right? So all this list here is just expanding this idea, right? That's what they're doing. So the Prophet said 3 stones have to be used. The Prophet said, the Prophet didn't say, but so we're going to obviously have to remove the filth. So having lots of filth on you would be a problem. So when you use 3 stones or 3 pieces of toilet paper, whatever it is, you have to remove as much filth as possible, right? The purity should not become dry, because if it became dry, that's now beyond the normal situation and it's worse. So it's beyond the normal situation and it's worse, right? The impurity should not have spread to elsewhere. It's beyond the normal situation. It's not recurrent, widespread. No other impurity. That's not the normal situation, right? The impurity should not go beyond the normal place, which can be the inner buttocks or the head of the male private parts. The normal place where the urine would go, right? The urine shouldn't splash off something onto you. That's not normal, right? That could be difficult, I understand, but that's not normal. The stone should be pure as well. That's something else there. Because if they weren't pure, that's also based on a hadith as well. That's something else. But so what are they doing? They're just applying this principle. Al-haja tanzilu manzil al-darura. Difficulty should be treated as duress. That's what they're doing. So the fuqaha, they have verses of the Quran, hadith. They have precedents of the Salaf, right, which is very important. And then they have these principles. They plug in these principles and they work them through. And then they debate, does it apply, does it not? Does it apply, does it not? Right? Is this an exception, is it not? So that's all they're doing. They're just spelling out this idea, right? Spelling out the idea, right? There's a general picture and then they just spell it out, right? I have a question about stones is reference smooth. So it just means anything. So when you say stones, you mean anything that is pure, rough enough to remove filth, dry, and not respected. So for example, if you used a mushaf, may Allah protect us, right, to clean yourself, or you use an animal, you picked up a kitten to clean yourself, that wouldn't count because that's a respected animal. You can't clean yourself with a cat or something like that, right? Or bread, right? You can't do that. You clean yourself with bread, right? So anything that's not worthy of respect, that is pure, dry, and rough enough. So a plastic bag, for example, it's too smooth, right? We mentioned last week wet wipes. Wet wipes are wet, so they don't count. So you can use wet wipes, but then you're going to have to go back to the default, which is to wash with water. Does that make sense? Okay. So it's very important to understand. In fiqh means understanding. We are not talking about going to the bathroom. We're talking about following revelation and then the system of this. So this is what people don't understand. They're like, oh my God, this is a lame argument. This is not interesting. When we go to the bathroom, fiqh, we're going to the bathroom, we're talking about the same discussions that we talk about in insurance, right? So this discussion here is insurance in North America. Medical insurance, is it necessary or not? Given that it's vague contract and vague contracts are haram, it should be haram. Is it allowed for duress? It's allowed for duress. Is this a need or not? Right? Is it a widespread recurrent need that everybody needs insurance? Right? So the same discussion. So all of these things, that same discussion. Taking a hijab off. Remember after 9/11, right? Oh, women are not safe, so take a hijab off. Can I remember those discussions? So you're like, oh yeah, safety. It's like, what do you mean by safety? Like, I'm literally going to die if I wear a hijab? I'm going to get beaten up. I'm like, is that actually the case? So if that's actually the case, like right now I'm walking home, right? And there's a guy shouting, anybody hijab will kill him. And I'm walking past them. Yeah, take a hijab off, of course, life or death. But then, for example, could we now say, is it widespread enough, or is it one off? It applies to this city, this place, that weekend, in which case we're not looking at it as haja amma, not looking at it as a widespread recurrent issue. We're talking about a one-off duress issue. So now what people do then is they move these things around, you know? Everything is halal because it would be difficult to apply the Sharia. That's how they do. That's what they do, right? So but what we're trying to work out is where do is this difficult meaning challenging, which is good for your iman? Difficult meaning recurrently, really, really hard, meaning that the Sharia doesn't ask you to do that, or do it mean difficult meaning like life or death, right? This is what we're trying to put things in, right? And obviously we debate many issues as well. Another example. I don't know if somebody saw the question today on the if you guys are all on the Q&A group, somebody asked this question, how are we supposed to wash our beard in wudu? Right? It's exactly the same discussion. Did everybody see that today? Or maybe yesterday. Someone asked a question, I have a beard, okay? How do I wash the skin under the beard in wudu? So how is this relevant? How is it the same kind of question? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has told us in the Quran, wash your faces. The Prophet also told us, grow your beard. So you have a beard, you have a thick beard, and you're making wudu. So how do you wash your face under wudu? What do you think? How do you wash your face under your beard, sorry, in wudu?
I think for a man, it depends on the length of the beard and the thickness of the beard.
Okay, why did you say a man?
It's not normal for a woman to have.
Thank you very much. So here we said that, what's it called? It says, no other impurity there. So here's a woman, she has a beard. And she says, Sheikh, it's very hard for me to make wudu. And I say, sister, it's not normal for a woman to have a beard. Deal with it. Just like it's not normal for you to, for example, I was urinating and then accidentally some alcohol fell on my head. Can I wipe that as too? I say, no, it's not normal. Right? So the sister with a beard, a thick beard, and it's hard for her to wash the skin under her beard. We say, sister, something rare. Exactly the same scenario. Exactly the same thing. It's not normal. For a man, it's normal to have a beard. So therefore, what do you think 5 times a day he's going to be asked to get water right inside of his beard?
Yes, depending on.
It's thick. It's thick. So he would basically have to like rub inside it and make sure and also the water wouldn't really flow. So he'd have to like spend quite a long time, depending on where it is. Right? Arguably, no, because it's actually very difficult. Right? And that's the Shafi school. In the Shafi school, if you have a thick beard, you do not have to wash inside the beard. Why? Because you're making wudu 5 times a day. You're supposed to have a beard. It's normal the beard's going to be thick. It's normal going to be hard. So asking people to do that 5 times a day is going to be very difficult. Okay? It's normal to have a beard. It's as a male, right? And that's recurrent and applies to me, you, everybody. Okay? Now the other question is, what about in ghusl? Is it normal to make ghusl 5 times a day?
No.
It's not. So the brother comes to me and says, brother, I make ghusl 10 times a day. It's very hard for me to wash inside my beard. I say, Habib, it's not normal. It's not normal, right? So you have to, in the ghusl, you have to wash inside your beard, even if it's difficult. Cup some water, get some water into your beard. But not in wudu. Why? Because wudu is 5 times a day, recurrent, difficult, as opposed to making ghusl. It's not usually going to be 5 times a day, right? You see, it's exactly the same system. Exactly the same system. So this is what we learn in fiqh. In fiqh, we do not learn about going to the bathroom. We do not learn about, we're learning about ideas, right? We do legal training, right? This is fiqh. Fiqh is understanding. Okay, makes sense, guys?
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh. I just had a real quick question about, I think point 7 or point 8 on the conditions of using a stone.
Go ahead.
Oh, 6, sorry. Is there a formal definition of impurity?
So we haven't, this book doesn't actually list them, I don't think. So there is. So impurity means urine, feces, blood, alcohol, dead unsalted meat, vomit, and what else? I can't think off the top of my head right now. So that's what you mean by, so it says that impurity, so urine and feces, this will be here, right? But it mentioned here that it'd be pure, right? So for example, you had alcohol wipes, The doctor said you just had surgery on your private parts. You need to use alcohol wipes when you go to the bathroom. So now, how are you going to pray after that? So you ask the doctor, can I wash? The doctor says, no, you can't actually wash for the next week. Okay, there's going to be a slightly different scenario. But normally, you could use alcohol wipes and says, can I wash after that? Says, fine. Just use alcohol wipes, make sure you disinfect it, and then you can use water afterwards. Right? But what you couldn't do is use alcohol wipes on your private parts and then just leave it like that. Doesn't count because you've used because the stone is not pure. So the Prophet ﷺ, for example, he was cleaning himself and somebody gave him some dung, right? Dried animal droppings, and he threw it away. Right? And scholars they learn two things from it. Number one, the dung and so bones and dung, these are the food of the jinn. So if you can't use food of the jinn, then you can't use food of a human. So you couldn't use bread to clean yourself because it's food of a human. And also, dung is filthy. He threw it away and said, "This ricks. It's filthy. Can't use that." Does that make sense?
Yes.
So, Sheikh, if I've used alcohol to, for example, disinfect a wound, do I need to clean it with water afterwards, or can I? Because
So the answer to say, yeah. So you put alcohol there for a reason to disinfect something. You just wash it afterwards. Yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. And there's also debate outside of our school. There's debate on whether or not alcohol, like ethanol, is actually filthy or not. Right? Dogs and pigs, right? So your puppy, subhanAllah, the other day, make dua, guys. I get a ranch somewhere where I think I can have a rukhsah to get a dog, right? I really want to have a dog, and I really want to have my kids want to have a dog. The other day I was walking down the street, and there's lots of Chinese people here, and there's the cutest husky in the world, like subhanallah. And I was asking the guy, like, your husky, like, is that a baby? And he's like, no. What happened was basically I think the husky had been abandoned or something like that, or not, So it was like about half the size of a normal husky. It was super cute, right? And it had some kind of problem with his foot. Anyway, so now I go and touch the husky. The husky is leaning his head against me while I'm praying. You can't do that, right? So a dog or a pig is also filthy. Yeah.
And Sheikh, sorry to interrupt. If you
Yeah.
don't mind, just asking one last question. If I had like a very large, like let's imagine like a carpet, you know what I mean, and an impurity was to get on that carpet, but it's a very big one, let's say, like in the middle.
Yeah.
How would one, like, I'm just trying to think, okay, I have water, I'm gonna pour it over, and then I'm just like spreading all the filth almost. So
Yeah,
how
so,
do
but-
we deal with a situation like
Okay, so let's do fiqh wise and then practical wise. Fiqh wise, I can pray anywhere on that carpet as long as I'm not praying on that filth.
Mm.
So that filth is to my right, to my left. Khalas, it's fine. Okay, that's number one. Okay, or I can pray on a carpet on top of that carpet. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, now practically speaking,
Sheikh, one question. Can I just?
go ahead. Yeah.
So, when I go to the West, for example, if I'm going to a cubicle without water in it, I frequently wash the tissue and take a wet tissue with me. So, according to what I understand now, I should not take a wet tissue. I should just use a
You
dry
could
tissue.
drip. Yeah, you could get a wet tissue to drip. That would be fine because then you're actually going to wash. So you had a wet tissue, and it's like dripping into your hand, and you're using that as like almost like a cup, and you're using that to drip. That's fine, but otherwise, just use tissue because then
Okay, thank
you
you.
know, because then it's dry. So the thing is, what you can't do is somewhere in the middle. So you have a wet tissue is not going to work, but a dripping tissue that you drip onto your private parts, yes. So you're actually washing, you're using the tissue to carry the water, right? It's not very practical. But that could be this easier thing, just use tissue, yeah. Tissue paper.
Thank you.
Right. So go ahead, who is so now that we've talked about the
was
carpet,
Muhyiddin.
Muhyiddin, okay?
Yes.
My first teacher, my big brother, is called Muhyiddin. And
MashaAllah.
subhanAllah, al-ism ala musamma, like because of him, there's deen in my family.
MashaAllah.
So Muhyiddin, the one who gives life to the deen. My brother Kamal, he's a PhD from Oxford, so Kamal ad-Din, right? Perfection. And then me and the weirdo, right? Farid means weirdo. Alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen. So go practical thing, right? Go and wash your carpet. Just take the carpet. The carpet needs to be washed now and then, right? Go and wash the carpet. The carpet gets washed, water everywhere, khalas.
Sheikh, what happens? What happens if I'm
One second, Sister Karen. 1 second. Muhyiddin, make sense?
Yes, so I would need to so since we're talking about from a practical perspective, I would need the water to flow
Yeah, the
off
water
of the
flows over it.
carpet.
Yeah, khalas, done. Yeah. So you
I
take it,
see.
you're going to wash the carpets anyway, right? At some point,
Mhm.
So what some people do, like like some ethnic Muslims, they're like, that is like, is this place pure? So basically, they live in a scenario where like the floor is always najas, you know, and they're like they pray on prayer mats because like, oh, this has najas. This like, Habibi, don't live in a house full of najas. It's not that difficult to clean things. Now, what is difficult is what's it called? Wall-to-wall carpets. That's a bit harder, right? And I remember, subhanAllah, um, uh, good memories of marriage uh, was my son throwing up at 1 a.m. at night, and my wife and I researching how to clean up vomit from the carpet, right? So like it can be done, right? It's like 1 a.m. and it's like here's vomit on the floor, and it's like this. And like, how can you clean vomit from the floor? You clean it up. You actually use soda baking powder. It's a quite good thing to actually absorb the stuff. So now that's all gone. Pour water over it and done. Khalas. It's going to dry up and that's it. Like it's not that difficult to remove filth, and it's quite nice to live in a pure house, you know. Beds are a bit of
course.
a headache because they seep through, that's a bit of a headache. A urine on a bed, like it kind of goes in, that's pretty difficult. And then it's not designed to be washed in the middle, so it's kind of that's a bit of a headache. But otherwise, make dua, inshallah. I'm trying to do some videos. There should be some practical videos like how do you do this? Like I purified myself every single day from pig filth because I used to work in a cafe. It's like every single day I'd be washing up, and I saw that they put the plate in there, and it was just like it can be done. It's not that difficult. It's like, people offer, it's like sometimes we don't know the details, and then B, in our minds make it more complex than it is, but it isn't, honestly.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead,
Yes.
go ahead, Sister Carolina.
You answered the question, Sheikh. I was going to ask, what if, for example, when we're in a masjid and someone had a nosebleed when they were in sajda and blood got all over the carpet in the masjid? It's not something you can remove, but you mentioned
Yeah, so
the
that's also
vomit.
another issue. So with blood, because blood stains. Okay, let's think about vomit or blood that stains. So now let's say it's a white carpet. Okay, you have this white carpet and the kid vomits everywhere and it's all orange or all red or whatever it is. Okay, so now what you do is you clean up the vomit as much as you can. Okay, and so you get all the stuff, the physical stuff. So now there's basically the liquid of the vomit, right? It's all stained. So what you do now is you scrub it 3 times with soap. Okay, you scrub it 3 times and then you put water over it, and that's it. So the fact that the stain is there, it doesn't matter because it's why? Unavoidable. And it's unavoidable for me and unavoidable for you and him and her. Same discussion. You can't do it. So the fact that you tried your best, right? You scrubbed it with water and soap and 3 times, khalas, as long as if the color's there or the smell is there, it doesn't matter.
Even if we're not able to physically lift the carpet at this point, right? The carpet is like on the ground, it's not going anywhere.
To the ground, but you
Just
now
throw water over it.
Yeah, so scrub the ground, scrub it. So you can't remove this carpet, right? So you just get rid of the physical stuff, right? You get rid of the physical stuff as much as you can. Scrub it 3 times with soap and water. Okay, now you've scrubbed, you've done your best, and you just pour water over it, and that's it. Done.
Okay.
Pure.
Thank you.
So I have 3 kids,
Yeah.
it's like mashallah. Remember there's it's much easier when you don't have those carpets on the floor, but it's reality, right? Kids throwing up on the plane, right? Mashallah, Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
So the thing is, the deen is not. Here's a problem that we have, and this is a key da'wah that we have to our, brothers and sisters who are not so religious, right? They wouldn't be in this class. They wouldn't even bother. It's like people have in their mind that the deen is impossible. It's not. Study the deen, you realize it's pretty easy. There's actually like lots of things you can do, and it's a really key da'wah. Like Habibi, the deen is not difficult. Learn the deen, and it's not impossible, right? When you don't learn the deen, it's always this awkward, weird thing, It's like deen is like being a priest. Like, how am I going to be a priest for crying aloud? That would be a weird. Like, I'm going to be a nun. Like, why would it be a nun? Whereas like the deen isn't like that, right? The Prophet described the deen as al-Hanafiyyah samha. It's like it's easy. It's doable. It's not easy, but it's doable, right? Like you can actually pull it off, right? As opposed to this is an impossibility, right? And there's also lots of rukhas, there's also lots of different agreement on many of these things. So, Allahu Alam. Okay, so it says, is that clear with everybody, inshallah?
Yes, Sheikh. Just
okay. So it says the sunnah is to from to begin to wipe from the back to the right side with a firm stone, similarly wiping the left with the second, wipe both sides with the private parts with the third. Each wipe must begin at a point of the skin that is free of impurity. Otherwise, you're wiping in the middle. If that makes sense, right? So they're kind of describing something obvious, but like here's an area, you have to wipe from before that area to the end of the other area. You couldn't, for example, wipe 3 times, meaning that whole area divided in 3. Does that make sense? So you basically have to wipe the whole area 3 times. That's what they're saying, right? So it is sunnah recommended to add an odd number of stones. So basically you wiped, for example, you wiped 3 times and it's all clean, fine. But you wiped 4 times in order to get it clean. It's sunnah now to just wipe an extra time. Why? Just because it's sunnah. The Prophet said, "Man istajmar falyutir." Whoever uses stones or the like to clean themselves, then you should do an odd number of times, right? It is makruh to use the right hand to clean off your private parts without an excuse, right? So you have some kind of reason. You're cleaning your kids' private parts and you're not that good with your left hand and you're trying to do something practical, right? That's fine. Similarly, blowing your nose, you blow your nose with the left hand, unless, for example, some physical need to do it with your right hand, right? Okie dokie. Makes sense, inshallah?
Yeah.
Okay. Azhar makes sense. Faisal, Maryam, Musa, I know. Zia, right? So please stop me. Whenever anything's clear, just stop me, okay? Some of you, I know like some of you are old timers, some of you like this is the first time you've ever seen any of this formally, right? Okay, so the obligatory acts of wudu, this is the bare minimum wudu, right? The absolute bare minimum wudu. If you didn't do this, you wouldn't have wudu. Number one, you have to intend, right? So you get pushed into a pond or you just had a shower, right? That doesn't count as a wudu in itself. So you're having a shower or you just got pushed into a pond, and while you're underwater, planning your vengeance on the guy who pushed you into the pond, you say, I hereby intend to raise my state of ritual impurity. And now you have wudu, right? You're in the shower and the water's going over your face, or goes over your face, goes over your arms, goes over etc. You make an intention, right? But you can't do a retrospective intention. Say, well, given that I just had a shower, I'll count that as wudu. Given that I just fell in the water, I'll count that as wudu. It doesn't count, right? You have to intend. Number 2, you have to wash the whole face, right? So the face then is from where the hairline normally is, right? All the way down to the chin bone. Okay? So work with me, right? You're going down, put your hair where the hairline normally is. May Allah protect us, men particularly, with receding hairlines, right? All the way down to your chin bone. Okay? All the way up your chin bone, all the way to where your ear joins your head. That soft bit between your sideburns and your ear, that is face. Now now my finger is now at the top where my ear is touching my head, and I draw a line from there all the way up to where I started from. So I started from the middle of where the hairline normally is, all the way down to my chin bone, up along the chin bone, all the way up to where my ear touches my face. That area next to my ear, that area between the sideburn and the ears, the top of where my ear is connecting to my face, and I draw a line. I get a string and put that to the top. So that means there's the edges where you have receding hairline to the sides. Your hair's going back on the sides, right? That is not considered part of your face. That is not obligatory to wash. Does that make sense? Yeah? Great. Now, by default, then all the hair within that limit has to be washed. So all the hair that's in there, your eyebrows, your mustache, everything has to be washed. What is the exception? Is the thick beard of a man. The thick beard of a man. Thick meaning, if you sat and spoke to him, could you see could you see his cheeks? Could you see his chin? No. Okay, so that's called thick, right? thin is, yeah, you have a beard, but it's like super thin, right? So like my beard, if you look at my beard, you could see on the sides it's pretty thin, and you could see the skin. So that skin has to be washed. Whereas on my chin itself, you wouldn't be able to see the skin of my chin because it's thick there. So the area that's thin, water actually has to get to the skin. Whereas the space is thick, water doesn't have to get there. Okay? And then any hair that grows in the limits of the face, you have to wash down. So imagine, for example, on my chin itself, there is one hair and it goes out for 2 meters. Okay, the longest chin hair in the world. Okay, 2 meters. That outer surface has to be washed. I don't have to wash inside the beard, but the outer layer of the super long beard that's growing within the limits of the face, that has to be washed. Okay? So imagine what is it in Lord of the Rings? What are they called? Thorin Oakenshield, or whatever is not Thorin, with a huge beard. Thorin doesn't have a big beard. What's the guy with the super big beard? Ginger guy in anyway, Gandalf the Grey, whatever. You have this really long beard. The hair that's growing within the limits of the face, the outside of that has to be washed, not the inside, even if it goes down long. Does that make sense? Yeah? Great. Now, Gimli, Jazakum khair. Now, go ahead, Faisal.
Sorry, Sheikh. I was going to ask, are there bounds within the face where the hair is considered part of the beard? Like, for example, the mustache. At what point do you start considering it? Like, if you have a goatee.
The mustache is not considered the beard, and you do have to wash inside of it. The water has to
My
go.
question, to be more specific, is at what point do you start considering it a mustache rather than the beard?
Oh, I don't know.
Like if you had a goatee.
Yeah, I don't know exactly, but I think normally the hair, usually practically speaking, the water is going to go in there anyway. So the issue is let's make it practical. Do I have to make sure the water gets in there or not? So well, I think the water is going to go in there, right? You know. So the issue is like you have a thick beard. Like let's say again on my mustache. Like so I just said, for example, my own beard on the sides, it's quite thin. Right, give me 1 second. You want to go outside? Come. 1 second. Okay. Sorry, the cat just wants to go outside. Okay, so so I said with my own beard, if you stood to my right, you look at my own beard, you would be able to see the skin. So do I have to put any effort into actually getting water there? No, I don't have to do anything. So you have a thin beard or a short beard, like the water's probably going to go there anyway, right? So like, where does where does it start? When does it end? Basically, okay, where does it start? Where does it end? The beard is that which is on the lihya, which is on the lihya is which is on the chin bone. So yeah, there is a part, right? It begins on the chin bone. So the hair coming down the sides of your mustache, that's considered mustache. But on a practical level, is it really that thick? Doesn't the water go inside when you wash your face? Like I think it's gonna do that anyway. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So that's the face. Now, as we said, for a woman, so this woman has a beard. Is she excused? No, she has to wash inside her beard, right? So it's not normal for a woman to have a beard, right? So if she did, she has to do that. Is it sunnah for women to remove hair from their face? Yes, it is, right? So some women, for example, like, hey, I'm 70, I really don't care. Like, I don't really care. Like, I'm not trying to look nice for anybody. I don't really care, right? Well, you should, sister, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala likes that, right? So some women, right? Some women, they're like, I don't really care about looking pretty and whatever. It's like you should look pretty as a man, as a woman, right? It's important, even if you're not married, right? There's a weak hadith to that effect that the Prophet saw a woman who didn't even have a bracelet on. He's like, have some kind of bracelet on. You don't have to have a gold bracelet, but something. like do things that women do, right? Like why don't you do, right? So that's part of being a woman, is that you do pretty things. So having, for a woman, for example, she has hair on her face, it's sooner to remove that. That's not just for your husband or to look like this or look like that. It's like you should, and similarly for a man to look somewhat rugged, right? So what was it? You got to look like Aragorn, talking about Lord of the Rings, right? So you don't have to look like Gimli, but you have to look like Aragorn, right? So Aragorn is like rugged, handsome guy, right? So notice the difference between Aragorn and K-pop, right? Here I'm in Malaysia, so everyone's into like K-pop here, and you see these adverts, and it's like, does anyone know what K-pop is? No? Yes? Alhamdulillah, you don't know what it is. Right? So K-pop it's like Korean pop music, whatever. It's cool. Like the guys, they look really, really feminine. Like they put makeup on. They look really pretty, like pretty boys, right? So you shouldn't be a pretty boy, right? Similarly, you shouldn't be for a female, you should look pretty. Females should be pretty, even if you're not married, even if you're not trying to show off to anybody. It's just part of the how you carry yourself as a slave of Allah. For a man, it's like, you're super into what is it, threading hair on your face like Habibi, like that's a bit, gay, you know what I'm saying? Like that's not, and I'm not just saying that as a point, like it's actually kind of like effeminate, right? So doing effeminate things, like some people, they're just effeminate the way they are, right? Like they stand in a certain way, and someone's like, I don't need me to be rude, but the way you're standing, Habibi, is a bit funny, you know? And you're like, I don't get it. It's like, yeah, you kind of look like one of them, Like, oh, so you actually, it's sunnah to be more masculine, right? To be more masculine to in a balanced way, right? Similarly for a female, you do feminine things, So like, why am I going to bother removing hair from my face as a female? I don't really care, whatever. But it's like, no, you should. So this is part of you embracing, worshiping Allah by embracing your femininehood, and part of you, brother, worshiping Allah by embracing your manhood, right? These are important things, right? Thank you. I remember at school, all the girls like Legolas. um, khair. He does the sunnah though. He does archery, right? So Legolas, it's kind of which ones do you go the rugged, handsome look of Aragorn, or do you go with doing the sunnah of Legolas, right? Allahu Alam. No, follow the Prophet. Okay, so washing both hands. So washing the face, we did that. Okay, now washing both hands and arms up to and including the elbows. Okay, so you're washing from your fingertips, your hands, your forearm, up to and including your elbows. And you have to be careful with your elbows, right? So go ahead, Zia. Zia, you had a question? Let me just accidentally turn his mic on. Okay, so case in point, or a practical scenario. Yesterday, I trying to be cool. I fell over and dislocated my elbow. Dislocated my shoulder. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. It got put back in place immediately, but it's a bit difficult for me to move my arm right now for obvious reasons. So may Allah protect us all. So I'm making wudu and I can't really move my left arm that well. Okay, so it's actually quite difficult to wash my arm. So if I don't put a lot of effort into making sure that I wash my elbow, the water's not going to get there. So you do have to be careful and make sure that the water gets there, right? You roll up your sleeves and your sleeves are still on your elbow. You need to make sure you're going to go a bit beyond the elbow to make sure that's the case. Okay. So washing both hands up to and including the elbows. Okay. So now I have a question. Actually, I'm going to skip this question for now. We'll do it another time. So maybe Musa Rocha, if you can research this issue or revise this issue, why do we say you have to wash the elbows? What is the linguistic reason for that? Right, maybe you can research that, inshallah. Okay, wiping any part of the head or the hair within the head. Okay, so this means you have to wash a 1 square millimeter, right? The tiniest speck, basically, of the scalp of your head or the hair within the limits of your head. Does that make sense? So what does it mean, the limits of your head? So it means basically above the hairline, above the ears, and above the nape of your neck, right? Does everybody know what I mean by the nape of my neck, the soft part of my neck, right? So I hold my neck, here's the soft part of my neck, and then I can start feeling these two bumps of my skull, okay? So above that, that's my head. Above my ears, above my normal hairline, that's my head, okay? So hair that is growing, okay, within that limit is considered my head. But if I have long hair and that hair grows in the limits of that, but it comes down to my shoulders, for example. Okay, so Legolas again. Legolas is making wudu and he's following the Shafi school. He says, I'm not going to do the whole of my hair. It's going to mess up my hairdo. I'm just going to do the little bit that's on my shoulders. That doesn't count. Or a woman, she says, oh, I just have to wipe a tiny bit. Great, I'll just wipe one tiny speck of my hair that comes to my shoulders. You can't do that. You have to wipe the scalp or hair that falls within the limits of the head. So, for example, the hair that's growing next to the scalp, or short hair, right, that falls within the limits of your head, right? Does that make sense? So for me, my hair's short. I could just touch one tiny bit of hair with a bit of water, or touch the scalp with water. That would be enough. That's considered wiping the head. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Right? So again here, so this is so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, wipe your heads, right? Which would by default mean your whole head, right? But the Prophet ﷺ showed us that he was making wudu and he had his turban on and he just pushed it back, right? He pushed it back a little bit and just wiped a little bit of the front of his head. So that means that even a small amount would be enough. Okay, but that's not sunnah. The sunnah is to do your whole head, right? Okay, so the bare minimum is that. The bare minimum then is washing the feet up to the ankle. So I didn't do my ears. I didn't do the back of my neck. Right? But washing the feet up to and including the ankles, again, you have dry feet, the water's not going to flow, right? So here's another thing. A man who has dry feet and a woman who has dry feet, which is worse? Why could it be bad for both of them? Dry, cracked feet. Why could it be bad for both of them? Are you looking after your body if you have your feet are like cracked? No, right? So you should look after your body. That's an important thing. It's not dunya. Your body is not yours. It doesn't belong to you. You've given this body, look after it, right? And then why would a woman pay more attention to her feet than a man? Exactly. For a guy, so you come and you say, Sheikh Farid, how many feet creams do you have? So, well, I have this special Norwegian feet cream and then this shea butter and like Farid, you are weird, right? Like you have 3 foot creams, right? And I put this on at this time and then before I go to sleep, I do this and before it's like that's really weird, right? For a man to do that, to be like obsessed with like these special creams that he has for his feet and so for a man, it's like look after yourself. For a woman, look after yourself and be pretty even if you're not married, even if you don't care about getting married, right? Even if you're 90, whatever, I don't care about anybody, right? It's just part of being a woman, part of a way that you worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Okay, and then to do tartib, okay? So you have to do same discussion, Musa, washing up to and including the ankles. Why do we say the ankles, right? And so again, is it possible for you to wash the whole of the ankles without going a little bit beyond? No. So with your face, you have to go a tiny little bit beyond. With your arms, tiny little bit beyond, right? Washing the feet, tiny a little bit above the ankles. Otherwise, it's not possible for you to wash the whole of the ankles, right? And we have a principle in fiqh. A principle in fiqh, which applies here and applies everywhere, is ما لا يتم وجود الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Right? ما لا يتم وجود الواجب إلا به فهو واجب. Whenever you can't fulfill an obligation in any other way, then the thing that you need to do becomes obligatory. Not a very good translation, right? So the only way that you could do this would be this, then that becomes obligatory, right? So the only way I can avoid the haram is being married. Okay, you have to get married. It's obligatory now. The only way I could worship Allah is by studying fiqh. Okay, therefore the fiqh becomes obligatory, right? The only way that I can make wudu is by turning on the tap. Okay, now turning on the tap becomes obligatory, right? So similarly, the only way that you can guarantee that you wash the whole of the feet is by going a tiny little bit over, right? One millimeter over, so that you know you've actually washed the whole foot. Otherwise, how is it possible to wash? Like you can't surgically wash your feet, right? Like practically speaking, you're going to go either a little bit more, a little bit less, right? If you can't keep your faith in the environment that you're in the situation you're in, you can't avoid the haram. You're in a situation like every day this is happening and falling into haram every day, then you have to leave that situation. It becomes obligatory, right? So there's a life principle, fiqh principle, and it applies here is ما لا يتم وجود الواجب إلا به فهو واجب, right? Anything that is a necessary precondition for an obligation, it itself becomes obligatory, right? Make sense? Okay, and then tartib, to observe the above mentioned sequence. So you have to, you washing your face and you have intention, I am making wudu. And then you wash your arms up to and including the elbows. And then you do your head and then you do your feet. If you break the order, you have to go back to the previous one, right? If you break the order, you go back to the previous one. Okay, I was going to say something. The intention. Do you have to have the intention throughout the whole wudu?
No, it just needs to be present at the onset of the first obligatory action.
Okay, but that goes against the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that he said, إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The actions are only by intentions. Actions are only by intention. So when you're washing your face, that only counts as a ritual, as wudu, if you intend to do it. When you're washing your arms, you have to intend to do it as a ritual. Otherwise, it's not a ritual. When you're wiping your head, washing your feet. So what's the counter argument? Why are you right and I'm wrong?
It's one ritual, Sheikh. You can't achieve wudu just washing your face anyway.
Okay, fine. One ritual, that's one argument. Okay, that's a good one. Thank you. Right? Musa, right? Musa was what are they? Musa, are you technically Gen Z or you're not technically Gen Z?
I have no idea anymore.
You're kind of
I
in
think
between,
so.
right? Yeah.
Yeah, in between.
Okay, so let's take the average Gen Z kid who has well, you know, ADHD by definition, by the fact that he was born in the 21st century, right? Okay, so can you focus for that long? No, right? So the average person, me, you, the average person cannot focus like that, right? You're not like, so you should be, right? Like if you don't intend, it doesn't count morally, right? Like I'm washing my hands, like, Ya Allah, I've done things with my hands I shouldn't have done. Ya Allah, I've done things with my ears I shouldn't have done. Ya Allah, with my head. Ya Allah, I've done things. Ya Allah, when I'm washing your feet, Ya Allah, please, right? So it should be a spiritual process, right? So obviously you have an intention, but we're not always that great, are we? You know, the Sahabi himself, subhanAllah, right? The Sahabi who was praying in his orchard and he got distracted. He was praying, he starts looking at the bird, looking at the trees, like, and he's like, wow, you know, he's like, it happened, right? People get distracted. We don't have that spiritual ihsan that we have like 100% khushu' and focus and spiritual nur the whole time. So to ask everybody, right, to do that, it's going to be difficult, right? You know, it's funny, the Hanafis, they say that laughing in prayer makes wudu, right? But they say it doesn't apply to a kid. Why? So is it easy for an adult not to laugh in prayer? Kids could have wudu. 10-year-old kid, he's not, right? So his 10-year-old kid, he hasn't reached puberty, he's praying, right? So they say if you're an adult, we don't say that, right? But an adult, if they were praying and they laughed in prayer, it actually breaks the prayer and the wudu. But it doesn't apply to a kid. Why not?
It's difficult for a child to control that.
Right. So you turn around and you're like laying into your 10-year-old son, like, Astaghfirullah, why are you laughing in prayer? Habibi, we all laughed in prayer when we were 10, you know? That's like, there's some kids who are more mature than others, but it's like a normal thing to do, right? It's normal, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He gives us the high picture. You should be focused in your wudu. You should be focused in your prayer. It should be meaningful. Pay attention to what you're doing. This is a ritual, but every single day, 5 times a day, you can't do that. So because of the difficulty, because it's hard, we say the very least is the beginning of washing your face. That's it. If then after that you just start daydreaming, okay, right? So at least at the very beginning of the act, right? At least at the very beginning of the act, right? Otherwise, it doesn't, But you want to make a real wudu? Oh, Habibi, focus. You want to have focus in your prayer? Focus on your wudu, right? Don't think about numbers. Think about quality. Don't think about this sunnah and that sunnah and all these extra du'as you can do. And, ask ChatGPT, give me a list of every single possible du'a I could say in wudu, right? Focus on the quality because ChatGPT cannot give you the quality. You can ask that ChatGPT, hey, give me some tips to focus on the quality of my wudu. Why not? But quality over quantity, right? You did a proper wudu where you're like heartbroken, and then you did a proper prayer where you're heartbroken. You say, Ya Allah, I'm really sorry. And you just prayed the fard. It's way better than praying all these extra sunnahs and doing all these things and that things, right? Quality, right? The Sahaba, they had quality over quantity. They probably didn't know half of the sunnahs that we know, right? Most of them. Never heard of, I don't know, Salat Duha or a lot of things that weren't widespread necessarily, but they had quality, right? Abdullah Mas'ud, he said, we have more a'mal than you, even though you do more deeds than us. He's talking to the tabi'een. The tabi'een did more prayers and more fasting and more jihad. So you do more jihad, more fasting and more prayers than us, but we had more deeds than you. So why? Because we had more zuhud. We weren't attached to the dunya. We had the quality, right? Quality over quantity, very important, right? So here this is what we're talking about niyyah, have quality, but can't always have quality. The bare minimum is that you at least focus, you know what you're doing, you have an intention, I am making wudu, I'm washing myself to prayer, whatever it is, at the beginning of the prayer. You don't have to say anything, just have to intend. So intention is to intend something simultaneously with doing it, not I resolve, right, to pray later on, but I'm doing it now. I'm actually making wudu. And it is in the heart, i.e., you don't have to say anything. To make a verbal intention is sunnah if it helps you, right? So we mentioned the principle, something that is a necessary condition for an obligation, it itself becomes obligatory. Something that is a useful tool to achieve an obligation is sunnah. So anything that usually helps to achieve an obligation is sunnah, right? So you tell yourself, Musa, focus. I am making wudu. Okay, I'm making wudu. Bismillah. Right? He said it to himself to help himself focus, right? To tell himself something, right? Speaking to yourself, you have to be aware, right? Yeah, so there's nothing wrong with that. So it is sunnah vis-a-vis in point of the fact that it helps you achieve the fard, but it is not sunnah in itself. So it's not a ritual, right? Does that make sense? So there's a difference between a ritual, you're supposed to do this because this is what the Prophet told you to do, versus this is not a ritual, just helps you facilitate something, right? Like the first adhan of Jum'ah, right? The first adhan Jum'ah for the Shafis is a practical thing. Originally, there was one adhan for Jum'ah. And then Medina got really, really big in time of Sayyidina Uthman. So they said, you know what? If we call one adhan, everyone's going to be late. So we have to call two adhans. One for the beginning of Dhuhr, one for the beginning of Jum'ah. Right? So that's a practical thing. It's not a ritual. Right? Does that make sense? So it's not recommended if it doesn't help. Does that make sense? Similarly, the niyyah of your prayer. I intend to pray fard on time, 4 rakahs for the sake of Allah, doing it now, Allahu Akbar, I'm pure and I'm facing the Qibla. Why do they teach people that? To help them focus and to help them go through the list, right? But it's not actually part of the prayer, right? Does that make sense? So then it becomes totally pointless if it's in Arabic and you don't know Arabic, right? Because the whole point was helped you remember. You don't even know what you're saying anyway, right? Does that make sense? Everyone's following?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
Yes, sure.
Okie dokie. To make a verbal tartib sequence is to observe the sequence of wudu such that no limb of wudu would precede another one. The sunnah way to perform wudu, inshallah, we'll come to this next week. Okay. So again, what is the number one sunnah of wudu? Actually knowing what you're doing. The Prophet ﷺ told us, you get up and you make wudu and you make wudu properly. The sins are coming out of your eyes. The sins are coming out of your ears. Sins are coming out of your fingernails, right? So you actually physically washing off sins. So if you know that and you're cognizant of that and you think about your life and mistakes that you've done, things you shouldn't have done, places you shouldn't have gone, words you shouldn't have said, you're washing these bad words off your mouth is very important. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Can everybody hear me?